Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'm Dr. Mohiuddin Mirza, your host for the program Food for Thought. Up till now, you have been enjoying this program. Some of the feedback we have been getting on this program have been very positive. We got some emails that some of our program on weight loss and diabetes were very well received. And even the honeybee program was very well liked by people. So hopefully, we're going to continue giving you the best possible information in a best possible language, plain language which you could understand. This program, we are very delighted that a very wonderful person is able to, I'll introduce him a little later, but the topic is multiculturalism, race, what is racism, as we migrate into different countries from so-called third world to modern world or Europe or America. Our problems arise when race started mixing with each other. What are human rights? What are our obligations as well? So hopefully we're going to focus at least 2 or 3 programs with this direction. And we are very glad that our guest is here, Cam Stewart. Really welcome. When I saw your bio and resume, I was really impressed that you have so much experience and the way you talk with us. So tell us about your current role. I understand you're with the Alberta government right now.
Yes, I work with the Human Rights Commission and the Human Rights and Citizenship branch of Culture and Community Spirit.
Right.
So I'm their community consultant and helping them help our communities work together and helping the government understand what the issues are with our pluralism, our multiculturalism, our diverse communities, and how we work better together.
Right. But how did you get involved? I mean, you were really interested in these kind of things? Right?
Yeah, well, I started as a police officer in the city of Calgary, and I started as a diversity officer, working with different cultures, actually in the northeast here of Calgary.
Right.
My portfolio was the Middle East and South Asian community. So I got to have a real love and understanding of those communities, and I had to share that and help build the relations between police and communities. And when I retired from police, I thought, how can I keep on doing that? And I started doing that as a consultant. And then the government now has hired me to support them at building stronger, welcoming, and inclusive communities.
Right. So what sort of qualities one could have to understand diversity when other people come with different language, different culture? Of course, we'll talk a little bit in detail. But do you have a set of qualities which make you, when I read it and when I talked to you, you came to me as a very unique person who loved to learn, loved to listen, loved to understand, and really dig deep into what are the critical issues which we are facing? Am I right that those qualities are essential?
Yes, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm very inquisitive.
Right.
And yes, I have a master's, but you know what? I learn better by getting into the community and talking to people, going to mosques, synagogues, temples, and to me, I've really valued the challenge of this knowledge because it is so much different than my previous life as an investigator, police officer, or doing all the other things I did. And one of the things I found is that understanding and learning about cultures it's a never ending. It is every time I go and I sit and break bread or have prayers with any of my brothers and sisters in the community, it's like, wow, I've just learned something new. And it's just made my life better, both in my occupational but in my family life. I've been able to take the best, like a smorgasbord. I've been able to say, you know what, I like the way that culture raises their family. I like the way that culture hosts, and I've been able to pick the best out of all these cultures that have blessed my life.
You know, you remind me of Sergeant Brody in Edmonton Police Service. We had a program with him on drugs and exactly policing, what is involved in there. You came out as a very, what's coming out of you is what's inside. And many times I find that in race relation, understanding people, that does not happen. And he told me that he's a very good listener. And he was not afraid to follow somebody to their house and talk to their mothers. He said that was the best strategy to understand them, and telling the mother that your son or your daughter is involved in these, and then trying to have a dialogue with them. And telling them after learning about their own culture, putting them, okay, here is what your Holy Quran says, or here's your Bible say, here your... Is that your experience as well, that you're inside, you have a desire to learn, that's the purpose of life, it gives you your own emancipation as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've been able to use that in a lot of my things by learning practicing what I've learned in mainstream culture
right.
and in diverse cultures and mixing the two.
Right.
So even when I'm looking at mediating conflict within
right,
communities,
right.
I'm not just doing it on the mainstream way. I'm saying in somebody's home culture, how would they mediate a problem?
Exactly.
And how can we use that to make a better community and make a more understanding community? How I got interested into more involved with racism discrimination was actually was after September 11th, 9/11.
Oh, okay.
I was the liaison officer for the police at the time,
Really?
And there was
here in Calgary.
Right here in Calgary, and there was, I'm sure you can imagine, like right across the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
There was a lot of discrimination and racism against Muslims and people that were perceived to be, Islamic,
exactly,
or anybody of color was being targeted at the time. And at the time, I was very upset that I was seeing, 99.9% of our communities being targeted, being talked to by the RCMP, being investigated, being not being comfortable leaving the house. And at that point, I felt it was really an important issue that we try to bridge communities even stronger. One of the things that I've always said is that 9/11 has actually has changed and actually improved, I think, our understanding of Islam, because people have made some inquiries now about the culture and about the religion.
And you're so right. Excuse me. Hardly 3-4 weeks ago, there was a write-up in Edmonton Journal and probably Calgary newspapers as well, that a radio commentator said that he's very uncomfortable riding a plane if a Muslim-looking, Islamic-looking person is boarding the plane. So when I read that, I wrote a letter to the editor, and it was published as well, that how even you know that this person is a Muslim? I mean, I'm wearing a dress now, which is not and Islam doesn't have a typical dress as well, because the cultures come from all over the world. So it becomes so tough that when we start stereotyping, and let's hold this thought, but this was for you. Okay, now let's go back to our original topic, race relations. So how do we define a race, at least in your wisdom and in your knowledge?
Well, race is kind of all-encompassing because it's really open up to interpretation, because a race could, typically it's been thought of as, in its most definite sense, is color of skin. But it goes way beyond that. It could be, color of hair. It could be geographic. So in other words, there's differences that come between areas of Pakistan and India, regions, and so I define it as being different and visibly different. People, who look visibly and appear visibly different from each other. And in racism, if you're asking a question about racism is more about power.
Exactly.
And how we.
We'll talk a little bit more in detail. But for example, you are an expert in race relations, so I was curious that there's no good broad definition of race, as you're saying that you could see people who are different from you. It could be color as well. It could be your language as well. It could be your height as well, the way you talk, the way you walk. But basically, fundamentally speaking, human race is one. Originally, whenever we got created, from the Holy Quran is very clear. For example, God says that we have created you from a single soul. And then we have divided you into tribes and sub-tribes so that you could recognize each other. See, here is a Cam Stover sitting here. Here's Mohyuddin Mirza. Mirza is my last name. Mirza is one of the race. So that we could connect with each other, that we started our journey from wherever, and here we are sitting and talking about it. So that is one with the race comes to mind. Am I right in understanding this broad definition in that?
Yeah, and I think people, though, want to differentiate themselves, though.
Exactly.
Whether it's by country of origin,
Absolutely.
Scottish, Irish, or by religion, Hindu,
exactly.
Muslim.
Yeah.
People want to have their own cultural identity.
Yeah.
And then from that, they determine that as their race or their culture.
And there's nothing wrong with that. All of us need an ID. I mean, our parentage. I'm very proud, I'm sure you are proud that so-and-so was my father or grandfather, or how far you could go, it's up to you, and you could trace it. But race also brings some responsibility as well. We'll talk a little bit on that. So that is when you talk. So why understanding race and race relation has become more important in Canada and probably in other areas of the world as well? That is it that we want to live in peace together? Is that the whole idea, understanding each other?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of research that shows, and a lot of countries that haven't done race relations well.
Right.
And companies that haven't done it well. And research has shown that just by putting a bunch of different people of colors or origins, religion, it doesn't work. And so it's all about how to manage those race relations or those intercultural relations, and how to make that work. And it's about each of us understanding where we're coming from and understanding where our brothers and sisters from other races and cultures come from.
So basically what you're saying is, as we are become a global village right now. I mean, you take the example of Calgary, Edmonton, Alberta, all over we have people coming from different race, different countries. I know the town I used to live, Brooks, for example, whenever I go now there, 20 years ago, I was the only one of a so-called different color, a different race. And now we have a large population coming from Somalia and Ethiopia and other countries right there. And that brings along, of course, the issues of how to get along together, understanding each other culture. So what is a culture? Now, race we have talked a little bit, and our viewers, I'm sure, are able to comprehend now that we are not talking of just one thing. Race is such a complex thing. And as you mentioned, if I summarize in my own words, that coming from a different country, different geographical area, different color, and then, of course, our DNA is probably common in most of the things, but living in different areas, we sometimes develop into what we call different race. But that brings the point, we are developing a multicultural communities in Canada, for example. So what is the culture and what's the multicultural from your perspective?
Well, a culture, I guess, is how people operationalize their community, their history, and how they work within that community. And so it can be everything from their song and dance to their connection to their community, and
to their worship as well,
to their worship, to how they gather.
Right.
And people need that connection and to operate. We have a Canadian culture, but then it boils down into a lot of subcultures, and I think that's what you're talking about, Calgary being multiculturalism and being pluralist, is that we value that. We don't want to take away people's culture. We want them to be able to practice their religion, their culture in whatever way that they see works for them.
So what is the opposite of multicultural? Do you understand correctly that U.S. went into a different direction, assimilation, or what's the opposite of, for example, you put very nicely that as a society, as a government, what we are evolving in Canada is that you keep your culture as well, I'll keep my culture, let's see how we get along together, we respect each other's culture. But what is the opposite? Is it called totally assimilate in this culture? You have come to this country, so this is our set of values, so that's it. Is that the term? Or?
Well, I mean, what the U.S. looks at is the melting pot theory.
Okay, that's the term.
So where they want everyone to come in and be American, to lose their individuality, and not necessarily their individuality, but to lose their home culture, their country of origin culture, and be an American. And of course, Canadian looks at, we want people to value, we want them to come fully in spirit and heart and bring with them what they came. Of course, other countries outside look at subduing.
Right.
You know, it
Exactly.
could be some cultures that are looking at even subduing Christianity
Absolutely, yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
they want to keep a very monolithic culture.
Yeah, I understand
And so
that.
there are some different models. And
Yeah.
in Calgary in Canada is still an experiment. We
Right.
are an anomaly.
Right.
You know, our country is young, and we are trying something and successfully doing it that other
Right.
countries haven't been able to do.
Right. So multiculturalism, the way I understand it, that I migrated from Pakistan several years ago now. But what I have done and part of our Ahmadiyya Muslim community as well, that we have retained the good values we brought from our culture. We have adopted the good values of this culture. For example, one of the basic reasons is our freedom to worship. You know, in Canada, most of us came for that reason as well. And the protection we got, and that's the fundamental right, of course, which we'll talk human rights later on. But that was one big reason, that you worship the way you worship, I worship the way I worship, but we still respect each other. And so bringing good qualities of each culture and putting it together, maintaining our identity, is not a bad idea. Is that your experience as well?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's that dialogue that comes out of that, and that ability and freedom to worship how you want to worship, to associate with whoever you want to associate, to have the freedom of speech. That protects your ability to freedom of speech, but as well as not hurt other people's freedoms. I think that is a strong value.
And this is sometime here, I know, very difficult to draw where the line is. And daily, of course, we know the issues come in the media as well, that what's freedom of speech? I could come and start criticizing you or a community and everybody without realizing that first thing is not factual. First thing, that you have rights as well. So I think in Canada, at least, there's a balance where the freedom of speech ends. I remember that Supreme Court of Canada has decided that it's not unlimited freedom. And for example, I have no right to criticize the way you worship. No, I respect it. I like to learn about it. And I'm sure that's what you teach as well when you go to the workshop on multiculturalism.
Yeah, and of course, you know, there is limits of freedom of speech.
Right.
That I can say something bad about your religion, but I can't say something bad about you. So there is an impact on the individual.
Yeah.
There is also the impact that I cannot create disharmony by inciting riots or inciting someone to hurt you. And so there is very much a limit on freedom of speech.
I know that there's nothing wrong with criticizing. If I believe in something and we are sitting and you want to question, well, tell me what's the wisdom behind it. You know, we could argue about it and we could understand each other. I think that probably is the foundation stone of understanding multiculturalism as well. That understanding, if you worship in a certain way, I worship in a certain way, and there's a 100 of years background in those worship system. But really, what are we learning? Is it making us better individual? Are we learning better human being? And many times, we are ignorant of that. And that's why I find your role is so valuable. You use the term building bridges when we were talking before. What is a building bridge?
Well, it's a lot like this, like your faith does.
Right.
It's about bringing people together,
Right.
to having multicultural, multi-faith dialogue, to have some understanding about each other, and learning what's different.
Have you attended some of our interfaith symposia?
Yes, I have.
Really?
I attended the one here a couple of weeks ago, where there was one here at this.
Freedom of speech. You were here?
Freedom of speech.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And so, I think those are very valuable to bring people together.
Exactly.
Have some individual learning, some collective learning from our communities.
Absolutely.
I always find that racists or people that are very set in their ways are like criminals.
Right.
That they are ignorant, illiterate towards certain things.
Exactly.
And I think if we can bring up everyone's literacy in regards to stuff like racism and discrimination, and even of their own race, where they're coming from, that what I find is through my workshops or through my education or through my talking to people that all of a sudden the light bulb goes on.
Exactly.
And they say, okay, you know what, maybe I was a little bit off, because we don't know where these things come
Exactly.
from. A lot of our beliefs,
right.
when I go in and talk in a workshop or talk to people and they have a misunderstanding about the Pakistani community, or about the Aboriginal community. Once I challenge them and once I tell them the truth, all of a sudden you can see them starting to change. I think if we can do that more as a society in a positive way, to have that dialogue, then there's better communication and better understanding.
Absolutely. And that fear is gone. I guess most of the time the ignorance breeds fear. That, oh, these people are doing like this, so there must be some background to that, so they want to take over whole Canada, and Canada will become totally Islamic, and then Sharia law will come in. Sharia law is another interesting thing. When I talk to my friends that, what are you afraid of? Tell me. You really know what Sharia is? And most of the time, they don't know about it. They have heard that, while women will be like this and there won't be any freedom. That's not the case at all. Sharia is for only Muslim who voluntarily accept it. In Canada, we have decided to go with the secular system, and we respect that. And when we decided to go with multiculturalism, that was the whole idea. That's just one quick question that on the cultures evolve over a long period of time. So Canada is hardly now, how many years old now? We were celebrating our 150 year. What was last?
125, I think, a little while ago.
125.
Yeah.
So really, our Canadian culture is not yet gelled as this is Canadian culture, because we come from all over the world. I mean, from Eastern Europe to England to you name it, and we have people from all over the world bringing different cultures together. So 125 years is still not a long time to develop a truly Canadian culture, although the basics is there. We talked about freedom of speech, freedom of finding work, of course. All those things the basics are there. But the nitty-gritty of living together is more than that. If your neighbor is, for example, is coming from a different culture, how do we interact? How we teach our children how to interact? So what do you teach them?
Well, I mean, everyone knows that our basic culture is based on Judeo-Christianity law, as well as French, Anglo-French history, from Europeans coming over. So, what we're talking about is our base is European, and that we are seeing a lot of non-Europeans come. And what you talked about is the fear, the fear of the other. What is going to happen now when we get 300,000 immigrants come every year? How is that going to affect us? How is that going to affect my job, my family? And so one of the things I work with is letting people understand, these people that are coming to our country, they're coming for good. They are educated, they are hardworking, they want to make a difference for them and their families. They are not here any subversive reason to make any bad things. They want to add to our country, and we need them in our country for a number of reasons. The least of it, economic, that we're not having enough babies. That if we want to continue our social programs, our CCP, our healthcare, we need fresh bodies to support and to add to the economy, the GDP. So when I talk to people, I talk about the base level of not the feel good why we have to work together and hug. We need people to work together and live together in prosperity if we want it for us all to be a success. If I want my children to be successful, we have to accept everyone that comes in here and have them be successful.
Absolutely.
Because we're only as strong as our weakest link. And if half of our community is vulnerable to everything from racism to poverty to crime, then the rest of us aren't going to do well. So we have to protect our weakest and our most vulnerable populations.
Absolutely. Continue this subject. How do we teach our children the value of a multicultural society, or when the dynamics are changing now in the school, for example? Children are coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, different heights, different shape. So how to show our children the value. What I'd like to go is that if at a family level, how do we promote the idea that in the sight of God we are equal, we are all human beings, our blood is the same, our blood composition is the same, so nobody is inferior or superior. So any thoughts on that?
Well, number one is it's already happening.
Yeah.
Even if we wanted to or not. Right. My kids and your kids are already more, their friends are more multicultural than my friends,
right.
than my generation, your generation.
Right.
And they're doing it because at the grassroots they are getting to know each other. They are going to school, they are having coffee with each other, they're
internet probably.
Internet. As adults and leaders in the community, I think it's incumbent on us to support that.
Right.
That if my daughter or son want to bring over a friend from another culture, to encourage. If there's an event at school, let's encourage sharing our culture as well with them. And so how do we, let's look at outside of our box and let's not just hang around our own communities.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's work with let us open ourselves up to that and share as well our culture.
And you brought some very good point there, and this was one note I made here, that the role of ethics and morals. Because we are talking of a deep issue. It's not only the having legislation on these things. We may have all the rules and regulation. If the basic ethics and morality is not there, which is taught by religion, irrespective of what faith you belong to. So any comments on that how could we promote more ethics and morals? Sometimes we are forbidden not to talk about morals or spirituality in the office, for example. So what did you find? Any quick...
Yeah, I mean, what I've done is to model. To model your behavior, like Gandhi says, be the change you want to be in the world. And by all means, laws are not going to protect us from everything, and definitely against racism, prejudice, stereotypes, discrimination. And I think we have to bring that into the workplace. We have to model what we want to do. We have to stand up, and we have to be able to look at the mirror at the end of the day. Did I do the right thing? Did I protect when I saw someone else being vulnerable? Whether they were being vulnerable because of their sexual orientation, because of because they were female and they were picked on by. We have to stand up, and if we stand up for one, then somebody will stand up for us when we're vulnerable. When I'm aged, somebody will stand up for me, or whatever my disability is, or how I'm the minority in that group. Somebody will stand up for me.
Well, hold on this thought, and we'll talk a little bit more on that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Boy, the 28 minutes went just like that. Such an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Well, this is program Food for Thought. I am your host, Dr. Mohiuddin Mirza. I hope we have been able to give you a perspective on culture, race, what's multiculturalism, and inshallah we're going to continue talking on this subject, because this is very important to understand as we migrate to different countries, to understand what other people are, what is their philosophies, what is their religion, and try to understand this in a much better way to make more social peace and economic peace and individual peace and religious peace. Thank you very much. Food for thought. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.